3 years ago, Facebook acquired WhatsApp. Some of you might remember, for about $20 billion. And the fact that WhatsApp didn't make any money, had no business model to speak of, is not the most interesting thing, I think, of that $20 billion transaction. The more interesting observation is the number of employees that WhatsApp had at the time. Today I read about Google's artificial intelligence product, AlphaZero, which apparently took just 4 hours to teach itself the entirety of everything that humanity knows about chess and defeat the current champion. Last month I was in Dubai, and they have the world's first Minister for Artificial Intelligence. Dubai also 3D printed an office block. It took them 17 days and just a handful of people. Some of you more familiar with China than me would know that in some of the airports, people begging for money outside the airports now hold up the QR code so that you don't have to handle cash, you just pay e-pay. Closer to home, the coat that I'm wearing today, I got it from Amazon Prime. I ordered 5, tried 4 on, returned 4, kept 1. Today, the top 6 of the world's largest companies are platform companies, or digital companies. Apple, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, Facebook, Alibaba. You have to get to the 7th or 8th company before you get to a real company in the way that we've known them. The top 4 of these are now bigger than the top 12 banks, global banks. So when we talk about global challenges in 50 years' time, I think it's important to take stock of the fact that we are inside of this tumble dryer that is the 4th industrial revolution right now. It cuts across every country. It's a technology revolution, but its impacts are far-reaching. It's characterized by extreme automation and extreme connectivity and extremely fast feedback loop between the two of them. Uber and Airbnb are emblematic of the fact that many of the industrial factors of production that could only be acquired at a big organization level are now accessible to you and me at a retail level. Together with low-cost connectivity and data analytics, we can now challenge established business models in virtually any industry and really challenge the theory of the firm. Why do companies exist? Uberization, and I'm sorry for these horrible nouns that come up. Uberization is accompanied by servicification of manufacturers. So things that were products are now offered as services. I probably wouldn't buy another car as a product if I know that you will be offering me transportation services using the spare capacity of the car that you already own. At a macro level, what this means is that companies don't need to engage in capital expenditure, reinvestments in heavy capital as much as they used to before. They're either sitting on cash or they're buying back their own stock. It's also having impacts on global supply chains, reshoring, bringing back of factories that were outsourced to low-cost countries. Philips shavers and Adidas in Germany, they brought back the companies, the factories back to Netherlands and Germany. Robotized factories, apparently the unit labor costs are a lot lower, but I'll leave it up to you to decide whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. It used to be the case that for every 1 unit of global growth, you got 2.5 units of global trade. Now you get less than 1 to 1. So the 4th industrial revolution presents us with an incredible paradox. In aggregate, if you add up, cloud computing, 3D printing, AI, cobots, Internet of Things, all of that, biotechnology, in aggregate, we're witnessing the unfolding of technology that has the power to give everyone virtually everything that we need around the globe. In health, education, food, energy, we could really usher in the age of sustainable abundance for free at an aggregate level. But the problem, of course, is not in aggregate. The problem is in the distribution of benefits and a massive coordination challenge, a leadership challenge that can easily make us snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. If you leave it to its own devices and subject to the current systems of governance, the way this revolution is working out is that it's not only disruptive, but it is polarizing in an exponential manner. By default, if we do not actively try and reshape where this technology revolution is going, it exacerbates inequalities and it concentrates economic surplus in a few hands. And these fewer hands, in economic terms, then have lower marginal propensity to consume. They don't consume as much. It affects growth levels. It affects, they put the money away in the stock markets and asset markets. It builds bubbles. It messes up with the finance systems, pensions. You know, when I say growth rates could be down, it really matters in a compounded sense. So 50 years from now, our grandchildren, if it's 2% annual growth rate for 50 years, they would be 2.7 times richer than we are now. If it's 4% growth rate, they'll be 7 times richer than we are right now. There are 3 home truths about the UK that you want to stack up on top of the Fourth Industrial Revolution that then gives us the scale of the challenge. Firstly, here we have a dependency ratio that's not getting any better. 18% of our population is 65 or above, 2.5% are 85 or above. There are 285 people for every 1,000 in working age. Secondly, there's the productivity problem, both the level of our productivity and also the growth rate of our productivity. We're roughly 25% lower than Germany. They finish stuff in 4 days, what we take an extra day to get done over here. And thirdly, lastly, the amount of stuff that we need to import in excess of the stuff that we export. Some of it is countered by our export of services, so finance, higher education, thanks to places like the LSE, and continuing interest in our securities and our property by people outside. So while we remain an attractive destination for the outside world, I think it's important to realize that we do depend to some extent on the kindness of strangers, and that we should not stop making ourselves attractive to others. I'll stop here. We can talk about what can be done about these challenges during Q&A.
Thanks very much. Well done.
We've overreached when we try to say to people that, look, in aggregate, things are looking great. Look at all the 300 million people in China that we have lifted out of poverty. And so what if your wages have remained stagnated in aggregate? Look at how wonderful things have been. I think laissez-faire will not cut it going forward. We need to keep distributional consequences in the design of policies front and center. People talk about, well, there have been other revolutions before. The Second Industrial Revolution, you know, when the automobile arrived, horse carriage drivers were put out of jobs. What's the big deal? They found jobs elsewhere. People moved from agriculture to manufacture to services and so on. But 2 responses to that. One is you should ask the horses how they've fared in that process. So unless you're able to retool, upskill, and really get relevant, I don't think they found all the jobs. The second thing is there are limits to this idea of we can move into services and tourism, leisure. I think there are limits to how many massages we can give to Mark Zuckerberg or haircuts that he might need. So the future of jobs and skills, I think it needs to be looked at as a system. And that's one of the lessons of what's happened. It's not just Trumpism and Brexism, it's what happened in France, in the Netherlands, in Austria, Germany. Even the near misses provide us with lessons that we ignore at our peril. I think we're also failed by the politics of false binaries that prevails in certainly the Westminster style of government. It's not capitalism or socialism, it's both. Better morals in markets, and you need more markets in some places that are gummed up. Most of the solutions that we need to find are in the middle. It's not in either pole. We did an event last year, and it's to really flesh out what we need to do to lift our constructive conflict capabilities. We also need a clearing mechanism when we disagree with each other. There are fundamental issues on which we do disagree. I'll ask you a question that I asked my online friends a couple of weeks ago. If you look at your own success, however you define it, what proportion of that would you attribute to you, yourself, your talent, your hard work, everything that you've done, and what proportion of that would you attribute to external factors, circumstance, luck, the social structure you're in, your mentor, your support network, and so on? So if it's more than 50% yourself, raise your hands. When it's online and people are not put on the spot, you really get some strong views on, yes, it is, I've had lazy people to my left and right, and they didn't do as well because they were lazy. And of course, you have others who appreciate the circumstantial benefits. And this belief, generally held difference in belief, drives your approach to whether removing estate taxes in the US is right or wrong. Is it double taxation on your income, or is it really something that helps with social mobility? Versus universal basic income at the other end of the spectrum. If you take the Yanis Varoufakis version of universal basic income, he says that every IPO that happens in a country, every time a company goes to the stock market, a share of that company must go to the national exchequer in a sovereign wealth fund, because every company benefits from public goods. So these need to be discussed in a non-polarized manner, and that is something that we need to help with. On the globalization point, yes, the short answer is yes, but not in the monotonic, top-down way that we've seen in the last phase of globalization. I think if we could do it all over again, we probably wouldn't have had totally tariff-free given access to China and the other countries in the same speed that has happened, or opened up immigration into this country at the speed that has happened. I think direction, absolutely yes. Speed needs to be more calibrated. And not so much top-down, but more through networks, through peer-to-peer, and here technology is going to help city to city. I think those horizontal linkages will keep us more integrated, coordinated, but not harmonized.
We shouldn't respond to an illiberal right wing with what he regards as an illiberal left wing.
Absolutely. I mean, is it going to be one backlash versus another backlash, one echo chamber versus another echo chamber, which is why I think it is constructive conflict is a learnable skill, and the workshop we did over here and in a few other places, and we need to keep this as a movement. Get away from the Westminster style of politics where everything you say is wrong and everything I say is right, and we shout across each other. And it is possible to inoculate and immunize communities so that we are less susceptible to exploitative polarization. So the next time round, somebody comes and says to you that, look, it is us and them, whether it's in the secular world or in religious radicalization, that we are able to push back. And that is the kind of intervention we need to make at the local community level.